Hi, and welcome to Mental Ministries Church of the Nazarene Wednesday night Bible study. I'm Tina Catane, and I teach the Bible study. We have been talking about the Sermon on the Mount. We did the Beatitudes, and now we are on Matthew 5:13 that says, and let me just go here so I can read it to you and not go by memory. Matthew 5:13 says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." So I want to talk today a little bit about salt, because Jesus is using salt here as a metaphor. Obviously, we are not literally salt. But he is using it as a spiritual metaphor, comparing the function of salt in the physical world with our function as the body of Christ in the spiritual world. And so if we're going to compare the two, then we need to talk a little bit about the function of salt, the value of salt, and the uses of salt. So the first thing I want to talk about is that in Jesus' day, in the first century, salt was very valuable. It was used for a lot of different things, but a lot of times, if you did work for somebody, they would pay you in salt. And the word salary actually comes from the Latin word for salt. So salt was very valuable. And the Dead Sea, which is on the south end of the Jordan River, so the Jordan River comes down, and Jerusalem is up towards the middle of the Jordan River, and then at the top you have the Sea of Galilee. And we hear about the Sea of Galilee quite a bit during Jesus' ministry. He does a lot of ministering around the Sea of Galilee, and then the Jordan River flows down into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is at its deepest point 1,300 feet below sea level. That's the lowest point below sea level on Earth. Of course, except the bottom of the ocean, but you know what I mean. So, it consists of 25% salt. If you compare that to, say, the Pacific or the Atlantic Oceans, they're 6% salt. So I don't know if you've ever gone to the beach at the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean, or maybe you've gone to another country and been on the beach and swam in the ocean. I used to live in Saudi Arabia, and we went every weekend to the beach that was on the Red Sea, and so we used to swim in the Red Sea. And so if you've ever experienced the saltiness of the sea, it's pretty salty, and it's not something that you would want to get in your mouth because the salty flavor is just too much. And so if that's only 6% salt, then the Dead Sea is 25% salt. So that's just a little bit of little information there about the Dead Sea. Because of the high heat in the Middle East, it causes rapid water evaporation. So the water evaporates rapidly, and that creates these salt marshes, and then they would go and collect the salt. So salt has many, many different uses. A list of some: in canning, in dyeing, bleaching, the production of pottery, the production of soap, the production of chlorine, and the production of a lot of different chemicals in the chemical industry. It's used for flavoring our food. It's used for preservation. Then back before refrigeration, they would pack things in salt, and that would preserve those things. And even like you get cured meats like ham and pepperoni and salami and those kind of meats, they're cured with solid salt solution in order to preserve them. That's why you can cut them and put them out on a platter and leave them out of the refrigerator. Their salt has healing properties. People go to the Dead Sea and bathe in the Dead Sea for healing of different diseases. And they have these guidelines that you should follow when going in. For example, you should never stay in more than 15 minutes because of the high salt content of the water. If you go into the hospital and you get admitted to the hospital and they start an IV, the first thing they give you is saline solution. So just plain old salt water, because our bodies need salt to maintain our fluids in our body. And so if you have too much salt in your body, you can get high blood pressure. You can have swelling in your feet and hands and face because there's too much fluid in your body because of the high salt content. But you can also have too little salt, so it can cause dehydration. They have some studies that show that it can even lead to depression if you have low sodium levels. I don't think anyone who eats an American diet needs to worry about their salt going too low, except if you drink. I've heard of, have you ever heard of somebody dying from drinking too much water? They had water poisoning. That's basically what it is hyponatremia, which is low salt content. So you get low salt content, it affects the functioning of your brain. You can have seizures, your organs will quit working, you can die. So those are some pretty important reasons that we use salt. But there's also instances of salt being used in the Bible. And so I thought we'd go through these verses and we would look at the different uses for salt in the Bible. And the first one is in Job 6, chapter 6, verse 6. And that says, "Can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the juice of the mallow?" So they used salt to give flavor to their food. And in Isaiah 30, verse 24, it says, "And the oxen and the donkeys that work the ground will eat seasoned fodder, which has been winnowed and shoveled with shovel and fork." So they eat seasoned fodder. So they put the salt in the livestock's food. And so to this day, they have things like salt licks that they put out. If you have cows or horses, they'll give them salt licks. There's just these blocks of salt to lick. Okay, so newborn babies. What did they use salt for with newborn babies? Let's check that out in Ezekiel 16. Ezekiel, that's Azariah, I think. Ezekiel 16, verse 4. "And as for your birth, on the day you were born, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to cleanse you, nor rubbed with salt, nor wrapped in swaddling clothes." So these were things that they did as a rule. This is what happened when someone was born. They would cut their cord, wash them with water, rub them with salt, and wrap them in swaddling clothes. And so the healing and properties, not just healing, but for cleansing, it was used for cleansing the baby and any disinfection. So there was a lot of uses for the salt, and so they would rub that salt on their newborn babies. And so it was also used in the offerings that the Lord gave to them to do. And so in Leviticus 2:13, it says, "You shall season all your grain offerings with salt. You shall not let the salt of the covenant with your God be missing from your grain offering. With all of your offerings, you shall offer salt." So salt was something that they used when they made a covenant. It was because it was so valuable. Salt would be used and they would eat salt. And when they ate salt together, that would be a sign that they had made a covenant with each other. So in Ezra, I think it's 6:9. I'm having trouble reading my own writing. So Ezra 6:9 says, "And whatever is needed, bulls, rams, or sheep for burnt offerings to the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, or oil, as the priests at Jerusalem require. Let that be given to them day by day without fail. So he's telling them to give the priests what they need for the offerings. And on the list of the animals and the wheat and the wine and the oil is salt. So salt is right up there with wheat, wine, oil, and meat. So it's pretty important biblically. And so Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth. And as the salt affects and influences every aspect of life, there's really no aspect of life, whether it's health, whether it's food, especially in the biblical times when Jesus was speaking, it was used to make covenants. It was used in the offerings. It was used to preserve their food. It was used to flavor their food. It was used for health reasons. It was used to for cleanliness, for purification. So as salt affected every aspect of their life, so kingdom people should affect their world and influence their world. And so we are the flavor. We add flavor to the world. We help preserve the world. We help cleanse the world. We help all spiritually. So there's just so much spiritually that we could talk about how we are the salt of the earth and how our presence on the earth affects the world in a positive way for the Lord. And so we've got to remember this is a spiritual metaphor, not physiological. So we're not physiological salt, we are spiritual salt. And so when we affect the world spiritually, because we are salt. So Matthew 5:13 says, you are the salt of the earth. And that verb is in the present tense and it's in the indicative mood. So present tense means something's happening and it's going to continue to happen. It's continuous. It doesn't stop. So it's a state. He says you are, which is when we talked in John 15 on the I am statements where Jesus said ego, ei me, I am. Here it actually says you are. It's the same word, I me, but it's a different word in front of it. So it's you are the salt of the earth. And so he's doubly emphasizing the fact. And it's you are, not you do or you try to be. It's you are. This is a state of being. So this is not something that you need to accomplish. This is not something that you need to try at. This is something that you are. If you are in the kingdom, you are this. If you are not in the kingdom, you are not this. If you are not this, you are not in the kingdom. If you are this, you're in the kingdom. So that's how it works. So continuous action, consistently maintaining. So as long as we're in the kingdom, we are the salt. We are salt. And indicative is a basis for the imperative. And so it indicates something. It's a statement. So in this case, it's a statement of what you are. You are. That's pretty clear. But it's also a basis for an imperative, which an imperative is a command or an exhortation. So Jesus is saying you are the salt of the earth, but it also has the flavor of a command in it. Not that you need to go out and obey and be obedient and do this, but that by being in the kingdom and being connected to Jesus and being abiding, that meno word, that you are being salt. Another meaning of that word for imperative is of vital importance. So this is a exhortation, a command of vital importance, and is a statement of fact of who you are. You are salt. You are the salt of the earth. And so the last thing I want to talk about today, and I know this might be a little short today, but I didn't want to go on to the next thing because it would have taken us way longer than we usually go. And so we're going to end with this. It is chemically impossible for salt to lose its flavor. I looked it up, and it's true. It is chemically impossible for salt to lose its flavor. Now, there are some substances out there that look like salt and feel like salt and seem to be salt, but they aren't salt and they don't taste like salt. But if you have sodium chloride, it tastes like salt. There's some other substances that mimic salt in appearance and in feel and all that, but they are not salt and they do not taste salty. But chemically, it is impossible for salt to lose its flavor. So what is Jesus saying here? He is saying, and I'm going to go back so that I get the words exactly right. I could probably do it from memory, but I don't feel comfortable doing that when I'm teaching because I have a responsibility to be accurate. But if salt has lost its taste, so he's not saying that salt does lose its taste. He's kind of being tongue-in-cheek here a little bit and saying, well, it's like saying, well, if the sun doesn't rise tomorrow, right? This is the kind of statement he's making. If salt has lost its taste, how will its saltiness be restored? There's no way. It's no longer good for anything. So, in the first century, shortly after Jesus' time, a first century rabbi was asked, how do you make salt less salty? And that rabbi answered, with the afterbirth of a mule. And so that probably means nothing to you, but a mule has no afterbirth. And so the answer that he gave was one of those answers I used to give my kids when they would ask me a dumb question. I would give them a dumb answer. Have you ever heard that? Stupid question deserves a stupid answer. That's basically what he was saying. He was saying, well, that's a dumb question because you can't make salt less salty. It either is salt and is salty, or it is not salt and is not salty. So there's no in between. There's no gray area here. It's black and white. It's either salt and it's salty, or it's not salt and it's not salty. Period. And so if we are abiding, walking in the Spirit, staying connected, remaining in Christ and Him and us, in this merging together of Him and us in the relationship, then we are the salt of the earth. And we function spiritually the same way as this list of things that I just mentioned, that salt's function is as a preservative, as healing properties, spiritual properties, cleansing properties. It makes your food that you eat taste better. And it's used in the production of things that we need, that we use in everyday life. And it was also used as a monetary. So we are spiritually that to our world. We affect every aspect of our world because we take Jesus with us everywhere we go. And so that's what I have for you today. We are going to have our regular Sunday message, 11 o'clock Sunday morning right here on Facebook and YouTube, streaming live. Also, we get together Sunday nights at 6 at our house. If you need the address, you can contact us and we'll give that to you. Also, on the 12th of December, we are having a Christmas dinner. It's going to be a potluck. So we will provide the main dish and then asking everyone to bring a side. So we're inviting everyone who's listening. And if you live in the Flint area, that please RSVP. Let us know that you're coming, so that we make sure to make enough food. If we're only going to have 4 people, that's a lot different quantity of food than if we're going to have 10. And so if you would let us know that you're coming, we'll be sure there's enough food for everybody. Okay, so that's it for today. And let's remember to pray There's been some tragic things that have happened here. It seems to be getting a little close to home here in Flint. There was a house that exploded and two people lost their lives, one of them a child. And there was a school shooting here in Michigan this week where 4 children died. So just keep them in your prayers and this world, and for God to intervene in this kind of stuff. So, all right. God bless you and have a great week.